The Chicago Bears get set to take on the Kansas City Chiefs after a wild, newsworthy Wednesday afternoon that has left most Bears fans' heads spinning. Nick and I catch you up on all the drama, as well as every matchup you need to know about on this episode of Bear With Us. What's going on, everybody? My name is Robert Schmitz. I'm the editor-in-chief of Da Bears blog, here with Nick Whalen of Football Guys. And you know, Nick, normally we like to tie a little bow and wrap up the last week before moving into the next week's matchups. And oh my word, did the Bears give us a massive bunch of stuff to go through today. You want to talk us through everything that happened on this outrageously newsworthy Wednesday afternoon?
Yeah, I mean, I actually had a conference today for work, so I was gone for half of it. Thought I was gonna have a good little Wednesday, and then we were gonna record later, and then it's been on the field, off the field, just so many things that honestly it's hard to keep up. So um let's just start with I think the most surprising news. I can't even say that all of this is surprising
All
news.
of it's surprising.
So Braxton Jones, arguably the best O lineman we've had thus far, debatable between him and Darnell Wright. He's on IR now with a neck injury that, from what Eberflus had said, occurred after the game. And the part that bothers me, Robert, with that is you immediately put him on IR for neck injury. So if it's something that's bothering him, you would think, okay, we're gonna take it a week, see how it responds to treatment, whatever.
Right.
Automatically taking 4 weeks off tells me this is a long-term injury.
I mean, it's a neck injury. How often do you hear neck injury out for one game? Never. The fact that Tevin came back after getting carted off the field for a neck injury last year, that was unusual. The idea that this might be season ending is scary. Absolutely, but it's completely out of nowhere. I mean, I'd have thought it was made up if I didn't see it from Kevin Fishbane, Brad Biggs, and hear it straight from Matt Eberflus's mouth. And what a bummer it is. I've seen Braxton Jones get a lot of heat online for the fact that he's not a picture-perfect left tackle, but I'll tell you what, I feel like he made some pretty solid strides. Honestly, from last year, he's given us, I feel like, a lot to work with, or he had before he'd gotten hurt. And while the penalties have been way too many. What is it? 6 penalties through 2 games. In all of the studies I've ever done on offensive linemen, most linemen never take more than about 15, maybe 16 penalties in an extremely penalized year, and they do tend to even out. So I can't help but feel like cleaner games were coming for Braxton. Hopefully they are coming, but in the meantime, wow, what a loss for this Bears offensive line, right?
So and then part of that, and I agree with you, and then immediately my mind went, and I shouldn't go there, but I'm like, okay, then does this mean that we're going to use one of the picks on a left tackle because there's a really good tackle class coming? But we don't need to go there. So I guess in the meantime, we have at least 4 weeks without Braxton Jones as the left tackle. He said, Eberflus, this is indicated Larry Borum potentially as a replacement. Even Jatiri Carter has some experience. He mentioned him as left tackle. And then potentially Darnell Wright switching from right side to left side, which I know is not ideal, especially when we think of remember moving Tyreek Stevenson into the slot. You want the rookie to get used to a position, and now we're going to shift them. So what are your thoughts? What's your best case scenario for left tackle right now?
Well, it's probably Borum, purely because we know he's played the position and he can be at least a medium serviceable swing tackle. Nick, I don't know how you feel about offensive line, but I have always been anti-move the offensive line. I've heard it from enough of these offensive line guys where they're like, once a guy gets a position, move him as little as you possibly can. And I get it. I vibe with that. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Especially young guys.
And so when I look at somebody like Jatiri Carter, I'll accept moving him to left guard if that's what has to happen, or maybe, I don't know, center or something, purely because if you're on the interior, it's kind of assumed that you're not going to get the perfect position for you. But switching out to tackle, man, especially because it's week 2. It's week 2. We are still, no matter how anybody feels, we're still in the thick of evaluating Justin Fields' third year. You need the best tackle play you can get. And while I'm not stoked that Borum's there either, I will take this one tiny little moment to remind everybody that as fun as Jalen Carter might be, because I looked this up and Jalen Carter has more pressures than any other interior defensive lineman in football, largely because he's got more pass rush snaps than most defensive linemen in football.
Okay.
There's a bear on that list, speaking of, but we'll get there later in the show.
It's our
Um,
guy.
but it's more to say that if that had happened, if the Bears had gone in the direction of Jalen Carter, they would have already started Larry Borum. So you would be on to Aviante Collins for potentially the entire freaking season. Like you can
Or they would have overpaid for Mike McGlinchey, who is struggling as well. For
Well,
everyone
they already
that's
didn't do
screaming
it,
his name.
right? Like, so
Mhm.
this is the draft. I'm thinking about it from that perspective. They would have had to go sign a true swing tackle, like maybe a Cam Fleming or somebody like that. And maybe that would have been all right. I mean, every
Riley
once in a
Reef,
while,
remember?
right there, I was going to say Jason Peters, where
Yeah.
every
Oh,
once in a while you strike gold and you end up with a perfectly decent left tackle just off of basically the waiver wire. But I mean, I feel so much more comfortable that Poles continues to add at the trenches for
yep.
reasons exactly like this. Nobody likes thinking about injury. Everybody wants the starters to play the entire
Yep.
season, but this stuff, while it super sucks, happens. And
Yeah.
to me, it shows the soundness of the team building strategy, even in a season where I don't think we're super stoked about the team's results. You know what I'm saying?
No. No. And this is part of it too, is that there are teams that get injuries and they still can sustain success. So you want to talk about losing your left tackle. Teron Armstead has not even played this year, and Miami is 2-0, and they're crushing it. Like you have to find ways. I believe it was Ronnie Stanley didn't play for Baltimore, and they just beat Cincinnati. They didn't have Tyler Linderbaum either, and they still found ways to win. So this is when you need your guys to find ways to patch holes. I don't care if you have to put Mercedes Lewis over there to chip to help Borum or
Right.
whoever you put over there, but yeah, we can't let this be the downfall of the offensive line, which one positive news thing from today is Nate Davis was back on the offensive line.
Mhm.
So he's back. He got in, I believe, Tuesday night. So he's back practicing today. Obviously, it was unfortunate news that we had heard. We finally heard what happened, but he will be back. So that at least will help out at right guard.
Can I just jump in and say, by the way, Nick, that I'm profoundly disappointed in the Bears PR team because I am amazed. Say what you will. There are so many people out there that are going to look and they're going to blame the fans. They're going to blame people that talk about the Bears. But when Nate Davis didn't come to practice, the first question that reporters asked was a blanket question. Hey, why didn't Nate Davis come to practice? And Matt Eberflus, with a big scowl on his face, said, well, you'll have to ask him about that. Which, what is the cue? Like nonverbal plus the literal plus coach speak in the past, that is a work ethic problem, right?
Mhm.
And
It's a negative. Yeah.
it's a negative and one of those things where we start thinking, oh well, Nate Davis does he even want to be here? And
Yep.
you and I haven't thought that, but enough people did. And they
Mhm.
let that story run. The Bears did nothing. They didn't do what a lot of orgs will do, pull the beat aside, say, hey, look, Nate's got like a family thing going on. So like
Mhm.
don't press this issue because he really wants to keep it out of the public eye. No, they let it fester. They let it
Yep.
bloom into assaults on the guy's character, et cetera, et cetera. We find out later that he's got a legitimate family emergency. And I don't know if you feel the way I do. I feel horrible for him because
Yeah.
I can't imagine what he was going through. Obviously, it has weighed a lot on him. I thought
Mhm.
his week one performance, as a hit and miss as it was, the hits were actually what we expected Nate Davis to be. Like,
Yes.
there's real reason to believe that once Nate Davis is practicing a couple weeks in a row, he may very well be the best lineman on the Bears. And that's exactly what we're looking for. And if we end up saying in week 5, wow, Nate Davis is really killing it right now, I'm going to nearly forever look back and just feel awful
Yes.
for the way he had to endure the story about
Mhm.
him evolving over those first couple weeks of training camp.
What I think about is okay, Eberflus organization. You are the boss. I mean, this is your employee, but I have a lot of experience being on football teams as a coach, and it's a family. And when you hear that stuff, I know there's certain things like maybe he's like, hey, I don't want people to talk about it, but you could come to their defense more without saying, hey, this is exactly what's going on with him. And to me, you stick up for your family. And that's one of those things where the leadership needs to come through more, whether you said PR team, whether it's Poles, who has seemed to be that leader, Eberflus, whomever it is. I think you could stick up for him a little bit more and find a crafty way to 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 I can like squish out the rumors or squash any of the rumblings to keep the talk positive for him. They did send out that one video. If you remember that one video where it seemed like a really intimate conversation between Flus and him, and that helped a little bit. But then played, against Green Bay, didn't go well, and
Right.
then personal reasons again, and then they festered again. So
Yep.
they need to do a better job.
And I'll give you a decent example without, we don't need to talk about it too much longer, but Roquan Smith missed a whole game for personal reasons. What was it, 2019? And when asked about it, Matt Nagy came straight to his defense and was like, he's got stuff going on. He needs to handle it. We are in full support of him. And then shut the conversation down.
Yep.
And there's
Yep.
no soundbite there, right? Like,
Yep.
people can say what's going on, but that's it. And that's a really powerful thing, I think, for when a coach is able to command that situation. Obviously, I'm not coming to too much defense of Matt Nagy. There's major reasons that regime ended the
Right.
way that it did, but it does start to, you know what? Let's get to the other stories, because
Oh, yeah, there's a lot.
there's an absurd amount of drama that happened, and the fact that all this drama keeps happening is implicitly part of the problem. So let's go story number 2, because somehow Braxton Jones wasn't the biggest news of the day.
No, no. And I don't even know which one is the biggest. People could talk through. So Justin Fields has a press conference today. Has lots of press
What did
conferences.
he say?
He's one of the stars, right? So in this press conference, he was asked questions. Hey, what's going on? Because there's all of the me and you see the film. We see issues, and they keep
Yep.
asking questions, and he starts peeling back layers. And they ask him more. Like talks about, well, I think I'm trying to be a little bit too much of a perfectionist. So then they ask the more pressing question with that. So then he tries to peel back layers. He's like, well, I think there's times when I think I'm maybe like overcoached, and I'm thinking about what they want me to do, and versus using that and blending it with what I do and be more me. And they said, well, is that what happened on the when you sacked and fumbled? And he was like, yeah, that would be a good example. Like, 'cause my internal clock said, hey, I need to run, but then I thought, no, I need to stay in the pocket because that's what we've practiced all off season. And so he's just having, I think, honestly, a conversation that you would have with one of us, but Justin's forgetting that this is taped and everyone's going to hear it. And what ended up happening is they ended up clipping it, and it's, Justin thinks he's overcoached and just this. So then later, and I cannot remember a Bears player ever having another press conference the same day in the locker room. And this
Doesn't
is
happen
probably
often.
no, and this is probably the most upset I've seen Justin Fields. And I don't think he was inappropriate, but he was firm. And he was saying, I know it's your job to report things. And I was trying to be more honest with you guys and give you more details, but cutting off clips and making this, us versus coaches, that's not what it is. We're all in this together. And if there's anyone to blame, it's me. It's not my teammates' fault. It's not a coach's fault. Everything that I do is based on me. So I know there's some people that will take that one and they're like, well, the coaches told him to have another conference, or whoever has another. I mean, you can spin this so many different ways, but it was a lot of drama today.
And yeah, it was a lot of drama. And man, I'll tell you what, it's so funny, because when I first heard Fields' comments, probably like nearly everybody that listened to the presser even read the full quotes in the presser. You look at those comments and you go, I mean, yeah, he's got a point. Like, I don't think Fields was wrong when he talked about nearly any of it. And yet, you get analysts like Dan Orlovsky. I saw Taylor Lewan talk about this, where they say, you're a quarterback, you just don't do that. And I can't help but think, Nick, that both things can be a little bit true. I mean, these are the kinds of comments that, I mean, goodness, you give the media, like, I love the media. I want to be a part of the media at some point in my life. But this is kind of how it goes. You give the media a firecracker, a piece of flint, and they're going to light a fire, because that's kind of the job. There was a point where I set Lions Twitter on fire because what was his name? Brad Holmes, the Lions GM, talked about accountability in reference to Jameson Williams. And I cocked my head and went, Why are we talking about accountability for a first round pick on a lollipop question? I mean, this is just kind of the job. And I
Yeah.
say that, I guess, just to tell a personal story about how, in trying to do the job, of course, you find an interesting storyline like Justin Fields thinks he's overcoached, which is a
Yep.
word that nearly every single Bears fan has used over the last 24 hours, probably 3 or 4 times when talking about the Bears to other people. So it's
Mhm.
like, Justin Fields just affirmed what I think, or
Yep.
Justin Fields just affirmed me. And I can't imagine that the coaches liked it very much,
Oh,
just to
no.
be honest with
No. And
you.
and honestly, on this pod, we talked about how it's like the golf swing, and it's like, okay,
Yes,
Justin, it's not about, okay, just rotate your wrist right at contact. It's okay, do this, and then your feet have to do this, and then your the plane, right, where the club has to be here
absolutely.
and your head down. Like, and so that he I think he said robot, but like this is kind of what all we thought. And I think he just forgot he was in front of the media. And in my mind, Justin is just being nice. He's just trying to peel back the layers without it, with just being honest, like, hey, I need to be better and probably be more me and this and that. And I wonder, and a couple of years ago, we know this guy that did this. I wonder if he's going to get cold with the media now, and it's going to be a lot less details because he's already I mean, he's not happy when he's up there. I know that we're not winning, but he's never been a guy that's like smiley, like, oh, hey, let's do this, you know. But I wonder if he's just going to be a lot, vanilla with his answers, and Marshawn Lynch of, well, I'm just here so I don't get fined. Like, and that's part of the process. That's what happened to Marshawn. Like, people ran with things, and now he's like, okay, this I'm just going to be very simple because I don't want to stir up any drama.
Well, in nearly 7 months of waiting between the 2022 season and the 2023 season had somehow helped me forget that the Bears are on a 12-game losing streak. So, to your point, there's just not much good you can give the media right now, which of
Yep.
course is going to only build further hostility between
Mhm.
the players and the media, because the media feels like they're not getting anything with which they can do their job. I wouldn't want to be in that room either. Based on the
No,
people that I've talked to, especially near the end of the Nagy era, it's not a fun place to be when things
no,
aren't going well. A rising tide in football lifts all boats, media definitely included. I do
yeah,
think, just in case you're out there thinking this, it does need to be said. The media does not want the Bears to lose. The media does not like writing negative articles about the Bears. Positive things get you the numbers. Much, much better than negative pieces, Nick. You've seen it. I'm sure every content creator has. Everybody wants these Bears to win. It
yep,
breaks all of our hearts when they don't, or when they don't show signs of winning. I think it was probably the right move for, I don't know. I say that. Now I feel like a corporate crony. I think it was fine for Justin Fields to said what he said, to say what he said. And then you got to back it up on Sunday. And you got to
yes,
back it
you
up
do.
on the Sunday after that. There's not really a choice. Cat's out of the bag. Second presser or not, you got to show up and you got
Mhm.
to play. Now, there's one question I want to ask you. When Justin Fields says, I'm going to go out, and this one I can quote, play with an F it mentality, how much do you think that affects his play? Where do you think you will see a change? If you were going to tell people, hey, watch for this, what do you think he's going to do differently?
To me, I think he's going to go, okay, 1 to 2 with my reads, and then he's just going to run, or he's going to just, hey, I'm gonna, when we saw this in the preseason game, I'm gonna force some balls to more just because I want to. I mean, I know people talk about the turnovers from last game, and we'll probably talk more about him later with all that film stuff, but like, he's been careful. Like, his two turnovers have been over the middle, which he doesn't throw to a lot. And the one at the end to Claypool, like, who really cares? And this screen has been talked about a ton, but like, he hasn't had a ton of like turnover worthy plays, even though he's had some turnovers. So we actually could see potentially more turnovers, but also more big plays with him just being like, you know what? I'm just going to grip it and rip it.
Right. In the name of being objective, there's no other way to describe some of the sacks that Fields took on Wednesday on week 2 other than heinous. You
I mean,
know
you
it,
could say
Nick.
he got a sack on Wednesday without media. He got sacked.
Basically, but like the 4.5 to 5 second sacks, like if those happen in high school, you're gonna get in that kid's ear and you're gonna say, I see one more of those and I'm
Yep.
gonna never let you play again. Like, they're bad. They're bad. You can't play quarterback like that.
Yep.
And I can't help but think, Nick, that the F it stuff, because I've seen a lot of people that are applying that, like you're saying, to, well, Fields is going to dart through his reads. This is going to make Fields anticipate more. And I'm like, I think if Fields was going to anticipate more, he would have already done it. Like, it would have happened within the structure of the play, and we wouldn't have needed to get here. We are probably going to get some more scrambles, but it
Yep.
wouldn't surprise me if we're basically going to wind the clock back to, what would you say, about week 13? Week 15, maybe, where it's like, going to drop back in the pocket. If I don't like what I see, I'm going to run.
Yep.
And I hope that's enough for Fields to make a statement, because you're going up against the Chiefs. Like, you're going to be in a
Mhm.
lot of must pass situations. And if they do what Todd Bowles did, which we can talk about later, just kind of giving up on the blitz and dropping into a bunch of spot drop zones and trying to confuse Justin,
Yep.
then it's not going to fix the bigger issues. Does that make sense? Like, yeah, of course, getting strip sacked after nearly 5.5 seconds of pocket time, that sucks. But it's what happened in the first 3 seconds that I really care about. After that, I'm bummed it worked out that way. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm rooting for Fields. I hope for the best from him. This situation is getting really toxic, I feel
Mhm.
like. And
Yeah.
if I was a coworker in this setting, I wouldn't do my best work either. And so, as all eyes fall on him and as pressure builds, I hope he's ready for the moment, because it may not get easier. Does that make
No,
sense?
no, these next few weeks are gonna be really, really important. I mean, he's gonna have to have, I mean, that first 300-yard passing game or multiple 3 touchdown game, 2 passing, 1 rushing, whatever. That's gonna have to happen. So the
And let's
other
let's talk about that, because
Sure.
yes, we need to talk about Allen Williams. We are going to get there. But I know there's somebody out there that Nick thinks that we, along with everybody else, are being massively hyperbolic. It's only week 2. Why on earth are we putting so much pressure on a stupid week 3 game against defending Super Bowl champions? I don't disagree with you, but it feels like the person who says that. But Nick, it feels to me like the Bears are rattled. And we
Yes.
know what teams do when they're rattled. Like, let me ask you this. If you woke up tomorrow and you forgot what day it was, but for some reason you decided you were going to figure out roughly what day it was by looking at Bears Twitter and the Bears themselves and seeing what everybody was saying about the team, what week of the season do you think we'd be in right now?
15, 16, 17.
So do I. It feels like end of the season stuff. And at the end of a bad season, people bench the quarterback and they play the rookie quarterback. And
Yep.
like, that's a conversation topic, because Nathan Peterman just got cut. So now Tyson Bagent is the plain Jane number 2. You don't
Mhm.
have to use you don't have to invoke the quarterback 3 rule to promote Tyson Bagent onto the playing roster and then play him. You can just play him
Mhm.
whenever anything happens. You could call
Yep.
it an injury and you could be lying if you wanted to.
Right.
And I mean, the
I
moment
mean,
Bagent comes
well,
in,
that was news today too. The Peterman cut was today. So
I
like
know.
that's like the smallest note. And it's also like,
Happy
are they
birthday,
doing
Ryan
it
Poles.
roster spot for a reason? Like, why are they doing this?
And I think it's ridiculous too. I actually blame, if you don't mind me saying so. I think it's an indictment on the leadership in this organization that it is so out of control, so fast. We're 0-2. So many orgs are 0-2 right now. The
Yep.
Houston Texans are not spiraling. The Cardinals aren't spiraling. Like the Panthers, who traded for or who just traded their first round a pick away from a quarterback who's really struggling without receivers. Like, they're better put together than the Bears are, who, in theory, Nick, if you just sucked it up and you got some decent quarterback play, you could easily stack a couple wins
Yep.
before now and the end of the season. The team does actually look talented enough on film,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
they're a mess. They're a total mess. And am I being irrational and melodramatic, or do you get the same vibes I do that people are freaking out and they're
Oh, yeah.
about to start making freaked out decisions?
Yeah. No, it feels that way kind of in the game too, because it's like good teams, they step up when needed, and it's like, okay, they scored, and then Tampa, like, boom, came right back. It's like, if you were going to be any kind of like any team, at some point you're going to like give us the chance and not let Mike Evans go deep again, or let,
You'd
Baker
hope.
get out of the sack again. Like you have to stack some of these things to get the momentum, and we have none of the momentum. So then it's like, I've been on teams, Robert, where, well, there's one season I was on a college team. We were 6-1, and then we lost 4 games in a row.
Oh
And
no.
during that losing streak, it was a lot of finger pointing. And it was interesting for me just to hear it and just to see, like, you know, players and coaches and just negative energy. And that's the energy I feel right now with Chicago.
I mean, they've lost 12 games in a row. And
Yep.
maybe they feel that that these two games are more of an extension of last year. And I mean, we're the fans. Like, of course, there are going to be points where we just go bananas. I
Mhm.
would always argue we care about the Green Bay game more than the players do. Not they care more about the NFL football game. We care more about the Packer
Yeah.
matchup, if that makes
Right.
sense. Like
Oh, yeah.
they win the careometer because it's an NFL football game and that is their livelihood. But us fans, if we're at a 6 for most games, we're at a 40 for the Packers game and
Yes.
just blow through the scale. But
Yep.
I digress because, like you mentioned, the Justin Fields part, you could debate. It's the second most salacious thing that happened in the Bears world today. You want to get into the last one?
This last one is it's just touchy. And this is again just how I handle my business. So I'm just gonna talk slightly about it and I'm not gonna speculate because there's a lot of speculating about Alan Williams resigned today. So if people don't remember, after the Green Bay game, also around the same time that Nate Davis was like left the team for personal reasons, Alan Williams did as well. And so Eberflus took over as defensive coordinator for this last game, and we saw some different wrinkles going on. But it came out today. He released a statement of his own health and family reasons, and he hopes that he can get back into coaching again. Later. I don't know if that means this year, if that means in future years, whatever. But he has resigned from Chicago, and there was rumors and things going on Twitter, and again, like I think I talked about this on our last pod, but I mean, he's a person, and like I'm not gonna
Yep.
retweet or assume or whatever because I don't know. And I don't want to lead into if something ever happened to me or to you, Robert, where someone's just going to speculate, oh, yeah, I heard Robert did this and boom, sends off into the internet. And then it just goes
Yep.
like that. That's not who I am. So I don't know what happened. I hope that he is okay. I hope his family is okay. I hope that no one else is hurt with what happened. But yeah, Al Williams is no longer a part of the Chicago Bears.
And from the human side, I'm 100% with you. I mean, hopefully we get a resolution on this one way or
Mhm.
another because obviously there's some strange details in this, like the fact that the Bears it's released a statement saying that they accepted the resignation of Alan Williams and he's no longer with the team. There wasn't your customary thank you or whatever. Alan Williams lawyered up, which seems like an unusual thing to do on a Wednesday when you resign in the middle of a football season for health reasons. But we'll see. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to
Yep.
leave it at that because it's not long ago that we saw people writing up big tweets, like 1,000 characters, on what really happened between Nate Davis and Matt Eberflus, and it comes across like complete fan fiction. We saw today a bunch of unbelievable details that were not believable and ended up so far, based on current reports, not being true. I would advise everybody listening to this not to dwell on it because the football side is terrible. This is about the worst thing. I don't know if you feel the way that I do, but like, yes, it's neat in theory that your head coach is taking over for defense and maybe the defense plays a little better, but like, this puts you at DEFCON 2 pretty fast, right,
Mhm.
Nick? Where like your defensive coordinator, the heart and soul of your defense is gone, and it doesn't seem like anybody knows why.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that, from a relational perspective, from an on field football perspective, that's going to, I mean, let's use a Zoomer term, right? Let's get in with Gen Z. The vibes are off. And when
Mhm.
the vibes are off, you might play a step or two slower. You might
Yep.
not make the check or hear the check that you expected to because
And the
everything
defense can't
feels
afford
wrong.
that right now. The
It
defense cannot afford to play slower.
You've talked about it before, but to use your language, Nick, it is like freely handing free momentum to the other offense
Yep.
before the game has kicked off. Like
Mhm.
Kansas City will effectively start on the front foot without needing to do anything just because of the external factors hanging over Hallis Hall right now. And I mean, if you ask me, that's about as bad news as any organization, especially in a situation like this, could
Yeah.
get.
And and it makes me wonder, like, because and he even talked about this in his presser that he has John Hoke and a few guys on staff that can help and fill in because even like Andy Reid, right? Andy Reid calls the plays,
Hmm.
but he still has an offensive coordinator that organizes and scouts and game plans with him. Without that coordinator, it all falls on the head coach, which in this case would be Matt Eberflus. And so he already has to run the team and the leadership and lead all of the coaches. So it's tough for him to do all of those roles. And it makes me wonder if they'll name an interim, which I think would be better, or if they'll bring in a consultant, which they could. They could bring in somebody that has some experience. I know near and dear to our hearts, Rod Marinelli
Ugh,
or Lovey Smith, or people have thrown out names but bring in someone to consult who can help organize and take some of the pressure off of Flus, at least for the rest of the year, because we're not even in week 3 yet. I
right.
mean, we have a long season, and you wonder, okay, let's say Eberflus goes full defensive coordinator mode. Now, how are all of the coaches being evaluated and taken care of, and the team, any issues that you have? Like, everyone goes to him. There's an issue, you go to your head coach. You have to deal with this or that, and so that's a lot on the plate. And I just worry about him and his effectiveness, because as we know, if you put too much on your plate, you become very mediocre at everything.
Oh yeah.
We cannot handle mediocre right now.
Nobody can handle dealing with too much. And there are only so many hours in the day. Obviously, we've heard stories of how hard NFL coaches work. And to be clear, everybody, we're talking 100-hour weeks. Like they eat, sleep, ball, and it's tough living. It's not an easy life as far as I understand it. But within that, there's just only so much time you can do everything. And I mean, it wouldn't surprise me, Nick, if you get a battlefield promotion from somebody like Dave Bergonzi, or maybe Richard Hightower basically becomes the interim team leader. Not that Flus would be delegating to him, but more that he'd be like, hey, Hightower, when people come with like head coach bullsh, like, I need you to handle this
Yep.
because
Yep.
I got to call the defense. Because based on the performance of the defense, if I was Matt Eberflus, I would take it over and I would not give it back. Like, just being honest with you, Nick, the defense has to show. Right now, they're one of the worst defenses in the league. I mean,
Oh, it's
I'm not even
been that
playing.
way. I mean, there's some kind of a record where if they allow 25 points to Kansas City, it's the worst Bears defensive run they've had, of allowing 25 plus points in how many games in a row.
And it's so funny because you end up with two things. If you don't mind me segueing just an ooch into us wrapping up the Tampa game, because they only gave up 20 points. They didn't give up 27. The offense scored on itself. But on
Yep.
the other side, I thought Tampa kept kind of just shooting themselves in the foot, like near the end of a drive where they were doing great. They passed on multiple 4th and 1s, if memory serves, just going off the top of my head.
Mhm.
And they had a couple of huge miscommunications or drive killing penalties where the fact that the Tampa offense just isn't the most talented offense that the Bears are going to face, and that's putting it lightly, really started to shine. And obviously, heck of a rubber band going from facing an offense that has a quarterback that's playing really well and 2 sweet receivers and 1 good left tackle to the best quarterback in football, one of the most dangerous receivers in football. And hey, if there's anything that works, it's that these Chiefs receivers don't play for the Chiefs. They play for whoever's playing the Chiefs so far through this
Mhm.
season. And maybe the Bears catch another one of these, muffed punts, balls off the hands. Like, the Chiefs receivers are nearly scoring as much for opponents as they are for their own
Yeah.
team right
Yeah.
now, which is
Well,
a bit on the wild side.
yeah, I mean, just talking about that a little bit. I mean, the Chiefs haven't played well yet this year. I mean,
No,
they didn't play well against Detroit, and you could point to a lot of different factors there. They didn't play great against the Jaguars last week.
their defense
Um,
did. Their
yeah,
defense looked
well, yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Like,
Well, I mean, that's debatable, because then you see, I think, I believe I have this right. So, I think the Jaguars are 32nd in like expected or EPA for offense. Like, they're
mhm.
like terrible. But you also have, Trevor Lawrence, who's actually playing well. So it's just a weird, like,
Calvin
and
Ridley's balling.
yeah,
Like,
but and Dougie P's not calling plays. So that might be part of it. They have a coordinator who's calling plays now. And so will Doug take that back, and that could have had an effect on the game. But either way, it doesn't matter. The defense played well. So Chicago needs to not get, oh, hey, Patrick Mahomes at a 10 and Kelsey's back at a 10, because I don't know that they can handle it.
I don't know if they can either. And I mean, just talking about it a little bit, Nick, I got to tell you, talk me down from this ledge, because when I look at this with as neutral an eye as I can, this feels like your typical get right game for the Chiefs. Like, trying to take the Chiefs side of things where things haven't been going well, things haven't been going well.
No.
And then they run up against one of the worst third down defenses in ball that doesn't have a pass rush, against a quarterback that if he can sit in the pocket for 6 seconds and throw the ball into the end zone from his own 20, he's going to try. And like you get suddenly Travis Kelce goes from clearly limited last week to a week removed from clearly limited. Chris Jones, who's fresh enough, is now another week into the season's
Oh, he was
lather.
balling last week, though. He was already
He was
at the
balling.
10.
He's balling. But
He's so good.
I sit here and look at this Chiefs team, and I mean, it doesn't help anything that Mahomes took it personally when the Bears passed on him. And who's your offensive coordinator, Nick? You think he's got beef with the Chicago Bears?
Revenge game, Matt
Like,
Nagy.
and we could talk about revenge games. We take it too far when we go, it's the Kari Blazing game revenge game or something like that with a role player. But like Matt Nagy, former head coach of the Chicago Bears, the guy who Patrick Mahomes would go to war for, like at Arrowhead, like this feels to me like the Kansas City receivers may get in the way of this. I'm just going to be so honest.
Oh, yeah.
Like maybe their team isn't this good. But if Kansas City gets their way, I bet you they try to drop something in the 40s. Like everybody could say that that's the plan, but I really bet that they would seek to embarrass Chicago in this one.
They could, and definitely with how Chicago's played. Now, here's the other side of that.
Talk me down.
You're the Chiefs. Yeah, I'm trying to talk you down. You're the Chiefs. You see the Bears are on the schedule. One, before the season, you're like, we know what the D line is going to be, and that's what the D line has been. And then you see what they've done through 2 weeks. They've been bad because that's what Chicago has been. Then you see the drama from this week. I don't need to prepare as hard. This is the game that they sleep on. This is that, okay, we're going to look ahead because we don't need to worry about Chicago. So this is, I mean, the Chiefs lost to, and I don't know if he was still if he was starting at this point, but they lost to the Colts last year. And the Colts were terrible, right? As we know. I don't know if Matt Ryan was still starting or not, but they lost to them in one of those games where you're like, I got eliminated in one of those survivor pools. So I was like, what? How did the Colts win this game? So that happens in football. And to me, like that's the only thing that can align here. That and if Justin Fields actually just starts playing football and not being a robot, that like you never know. And this is one of those games where it seems like it's clearly this is going to be. And it's like, the NFL reminds you all the time of how things aren't always going to go what you think they're going to go.
You know, it's so funny that you talk about that because, first of all, you're absolutely right. Weird stuff happens. And I mean, every athlete that's ever played a sport has gone through this where you took an opponent lightly. You started thinking about your goal celebration instead of how you were going to score a goal. I played lacrosse, so that's what I did. Okay, but somebody else would start thinking about their touchdown celebration instead of thinking about the play that's going to get them into the end zone. And then you show up and it turns out they're competing too. And so that can be enough. But I think another key piece of this that we need to talk about, because we breezed over something at the start of the series or at the start of this podcast, but Chicago's going to be marching into the into Arrowhead Stadium with a shuffled up offensive line. Don't we love it? Don't we love that? Don't we love being in week 3,
especially with Chris Jones there?
Isn't this our third unique offensive line in 3 games? If memory serves, because we started with Nate Davis, and that already you could argue was a second offensive line because it's not Tevin Jenkins. And so then Nate Davis is out. We got to put Tyree Carter in. Now Nate Davis is back. So we've got to put Larry Borum in on the outside. And for a Spags team that, forgive me, Spags likes to blitz, right?
Yeah. And the thing with Spags is he's got a lot of fun tools of players with skill sets now that he can do some things with. So, I mean, if we want to talk through a little bit of their defense, some pieces that I like, and again, from watching their structure, Leo Chenault, he's done pretty well. The linebacker from Wisconsin, George Karlaftis has taken a step this year as an edge rusher to match Chris Jones. They got some decent linebackers, Nick Bolton in the middle there. And then Trent McDuffie has taken a step this year as being a solid corner for them. The weakness for them, this is the hope, okay? The weakness is the rest of that secondary hasn't played great this year.
No.
And they like to blitz, which gives you opportunities to run for Fields or to throw with some openings. And they also play man cover 2, which I
Right.
think is like, okay, we'll hope that or man cover one, which okay, if they're turning and running, that's going to leave some running lanes for Fields as well.
You'd sure hope so. And I mean, if there's one thing, as we kind of blend week 2 film review takes with week 3 that really surprised me, man, I don't want to point a finger at Chris Morgan because I gave him a lot of slack for this last year. But we are running on nearly 3 years straight, Nick, where the Bears cannot handle games up front. It's
Oh
like
my
their offensive
gosh.
linemen refuse to get any depth. It's like everybody's going to short set all the time and assume that nobody could ever possibly run a stunt. It felt like Todd Bowles very early because we talked about blitzing, and you were totally right.
Mhm.
Whole first drive, Todd Bowles sent the blitz, and guess what? The Bears picked it up
Yep.
every time. I mean, flawlessly, honestly. Khalil
And
Herbert,
Fields did well with the blitz, and we talked about this from week 1.
well, Fields did well with a clearer picture. The offensive,
Mhm,
like, I have to give credit where credit's due. The offensive line smoked those blitzes. Khalil
mhm.
Herbert stepped up, and Fields was throwing against 5 and 6 men, and he was precise, and he was
Yep.
really, really good. Tipped caps to everybody, right? And then Tampa realized, well, if Fields going to hold on to the ball for 4 seconds, why would we send extra people? And
Yep.
so I'm curious to see if Spagnola does the same thing, if only because it really did. Like, if you saw what I did, Nick, the Bears offense immediately ran aground as
Yeah.
soon as they
Yeah.
stopped sending
And
blitzes.
well, like to me, it's like, okay, so if your friend, in school took a test and it was first hour, and then your friend second hour took the same test and they compared and it was the same answers for stuff. And you're taking it fourth hour and they're like, hey, listen, five, this is the answer, and six, this is the answer. Defenses right now run as many games up front as you want because Chicago can't pick it up. And Lucas Patrick, again, punting him into the sun. He's the worst center in all of PFF in terms of their grading. And they have 32 of them in front of him. So one team has two centers in front of Lucas Patrick.
And you know, it's
He's crushing the Bears right now.
and to talk about it, Nick, one thing I think is hilarious is that I thought Patrick, okay, so I'm going to start somewhere you probably didn't expect. I thought Patrick was not as bad as his say PFF grade, etc., suggested he was as a blocker. But we got to talk about this. So I did a bunch of work, and I'm still working on it. I've been strapped on time, blah blah blah, typical excuses, right? But I want to put something together that compares a lot of different quarterbacks to Justin Fields' dropback pace because it's really really funky. And
Mm.
watching other quarterbacks in the league helps you see it. And when I was watching through last night, just again, I noticed every other center doesn't snap the ball across the exterior of wherever the quarterback could possibly catch it. Fields is fishing these things off the turf. He's fishing them way, way, way off his hip pocket. Lucas Patrick missed one rep. We put in Doug Feeney and he immediately misfired and snapped the ball to nowhere. Bro, I have no idea what is going on. But
You,
it's like these centers are doing it on purpose. It's so inconsistent.
you know one thing that I found, and I know that you do a ton of film work just like I do. I feel like when there's a bad snap from Patrick, it's when there's a screen. And so, like a quick screen, and he's got to snap it, 'cause then he's got to get to there, or he's got to have a big reach block. And so he's going and he's rushing it. And Feeney too. Feeney had that one that was really high and right. And then
Ugly.
I believe it was a screen to the left. So I think he's doing that, and he's got to get out and get to a block. And I feel like again, it's like a running back. You have to get the handoff before you can make a move. Receiver, you have to catch the ball and tuck before you can make a move. Like you have to snap the ball to him and again, they're not all going to be perfect, but you got to put it in at least a 2 by 2 area or you're not even at NFL level.
And it's so funny because what is this? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me to some degree. Like you and I, Nick, could go through and we could talk through every position on the roster. But the worst part is so this is, I guess, how I think about it. You tell me if this is nuts. If the wide receivers suck for the Kansas City Chiefs, maybe the wide receivers suck. Maybe Sky Moore just isn't very good. Maybe Kadarius Toney just can't really play consistent receiver. Very possible, especially since the offensive line looks pretty good, save their right tackle. Quarterback looks good. Tight end room looks good, et cetera, et cetera. Right? The Bears have Cole Kmet, who generally knows what he's doing, looking lost out there. I don't know what he thought he was doing on that chip block attempt for
Oh
uh
my
for
god. I
Darnold
lost
Wright.
my mind on film on that.
It's one of the most unconscionable things that I have ever seen in my life.
And
I'm
then he
not even
gets in
playing.
Darnell Wright's way. Like Darnell Wright can't pass
It's
that
a
'cause
free
he's in his
sack.
way.
I mean, it's a free sack. It doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense. There's no way that was the plan. Like if they tried to dress it up like it was going to be one thing and then it was supposed to be some kind of quick shuffle chip for Jatiri Carter, that's ridiculous. And we've
Yeah.
completely overthought how football works because as soon as Cole Kmet left, Shaq Barrett went, "Oh, this is kind of like a pull play," and just followed the puller and had a free sack, as free as it gets. But worse, Nick, there were not one, there were two examples of Bears receivers just curling in the same place. Like, I mean, there are too many examples where instead of settling into coverage on routes like stick, Cole Kmet just runs himself into the other corner. Even as he catches the ball, like instead of stopping, presenting for the ball, and turning upfield, we just catch it on the sprint and run straight into a DB. Like, let's just say it out loud, Nick. The details in this offense are
Yes.
so bad. They are
Yeah.
so bad. We haven't
Mhm.
reached Nagy level where literally you'll get Rashad Coward stepping left and everybody else steps right and everybody bumps into each other, but we're close. Like, I
Yeah.
mean,
Claypool thought it was a run play on the screen that he got a penalty for. Like these are all, and again, he's not a rookie. Like there's a lot of these guys. It's not Lucas Patrick's first rodeo here. We have veterans that are not on the same page. DJ Moore and Cole Kmet being in the same area, they're both veterans at this
you
point.
you tell me if I'm playing superstar psychiatrist or if I actually have a point. The body language on the Bears are so bad, especially when things start to spin out of control. It makes it look like people are tuned out. And again, this is the week 2 game you and I are talking about.
Mhm.
Season not
Well-
over at
well,
all. Like
I-
how are we making these mistakes?
I gotta give a positive body language. Okay. We gotta do this. Was not perfect last week. Chase Claypool,
He tried.
he brought it. I
Yeah.
mean, he had one crushing block. He had another really good block. He had effort after the reception. I mean, that interception at the end, I mean, his hands were on it and he gave it an effort. The touchdown, he had a great route on that. At the top of that, getting more width, pulling the defender out, and he came back in. Like he had a way better game.
I mean, if I was his agent, I would have berated him after week 1. I would have been like, "Bro, this is your contract year.
Mhm.
What are you doing? I don't care how much you hate being there. I don't care how much you don't do it. You give me another one of these weeks, I'm not going to be able to get you better than vet minimum at this
Yeah.
rate. Like,
yeah.
you have got to give me more to work with." And he did. More to say, Nick, that like I would love to credit Chase Claypool's his effort to coaching. I don't know, man. Like Chase Claypool has plenty of intrinsic reasons to just related to his circumstance alone to try. And it
Well-
wouldn't surprise me if money was motivating a little bit.
Let me digress back to a point that you had. Okay. And again, this is going to turn this into a negative, but again, we have to talk about it because it's relevant. Last week, what did we hear from Chase Claypool in the media? Talked to Matt Eberflus. They talked about, oh, well, making a change at receiver, right? And he had just talked kind of very vaguely about Claypool, and people ran with Chase Claypool is going to be inactive. No correction was happened there. His position coach had to go defend him in the media. That can't happen.
That can't happen.
Can't happen. That's again another leadership thing. Sorry, I know it went
You know what
negative.
else? No, you know what else can't happen? I want to go there. Like, okay, so I think I am not. We're living in this world right now where if you attack Getsy, you're caping for Fields, and if you attack Fields, you're caping for Getsy, and I hate it. Honestly, both of them they're doing such poor jobs. And
Yep.
yes, of course, I think that the coaching is more interesting to talk about, and frankly, has a bigger effect. Look at John McVay. He's got Puka Nacua playing like Darnell Mooney can't play right now, and Darnell Mooney, yeah.
Tutu Atwell is 7th in the NFL in receiving yards as well, and people aren't talking about him. I mean, and he's this skinny guy from Louisville in his 3rd year. I mean, Matt Stafford's back. That's the least talented team. Maybe I'm sorry, not least, 3rd least talented team, and they beat Seattle, and they were toe to toe with the 49ers.
Let's go a step further. The Packers have brought a knife to a gunfight twice, and they almost won the second one.
Yep.
Like, I mean, we don't need to talk about Desmond Ritter, but it's more to
I mean-
say that, like, yeah.
I mean, I'm a coach, Robert.
Mhm.
Coaching matters. I know it matters because I
Matters a
can
ton.
out-coach people. I know it.
Why on earth? Why on earth? It doesn't make any sense to me, Nick, that we are going to not only play Trent Taylor on nearly 25 offensive snaps, which is more than we're going to play Velus Jones, who we activated, by the way. We spent an activation slot on Velus Jones, but we are only going to use Velus Jones in a formation. I saw Brad Spielberger point this out today on Twitter. Like within a formation that is the only formation where Velus tends to get the handoff. Like, bro, we are 19 games into the Luke Getsy tenure. He's already getting solved. Man, what are we doing? Like,
Well, on that play, my biggest issue with that play isn't that, but I mean, that is an issue. There's 2 tight ends that are blocking, right?
oh, they
On
get
the other side of
mashed.
that. Okay, Cole Kmet gets walked back 4 yards, and then he's got Robert Tonyan, who I think Robert Tonyan has been terrible,
Terrible.
terrible. Blocking, receiving, terrible. That second, pass incompletion to him, he totally had a terrible release, led the defender there, and Fields had to throw outside for an incompletion. Why wasn't I mean, we signed some guy who honestly has been the best guy on offense, in my opinion. Mercedes Lewis is a great blocker. So if you're going to run to the left and you get 2 tight ends over there, maybe put him over there. Who cares if they know it's coming? You know, he can dig out a D end if you need him to.
I mean, he was a beast. Like Mercedes Lewis, I have to think it's just a like conditioning thing. I mean, he's 39 years old. Like maybe he just can't play the whole game, or maybe they really don't trust him in the receiving game. Not that that's helping anything right now. But summing all this up, Nick, I mean, we could talk matchups because again, what is Spag going to do? It would not shock me to see Spags basically just tear out Todd Bowles' second quarter, third quarter game plan and run it because the defense that Spags runs makes way more sense when you're attacking Jared Goff, when you're attacking Kirk Cousins, a lot of these quarterbacks where you have to make life harder for them. Right now, I love him. Justin Fields and Luke Getsy are making offense plenty hard on themselves.
Yes, they
Just
are.
drop back, max out the standard difficulty with some kind of 7 in coverage spot drop zone, run a game up front, get Chris Jones on Cody Whitehair, who is not playing well. This is post-injury Cody Whitehair, but
Yep.
now it's just this is Cody Whitehair at this point.
Yep.
And you're going to be fine. Like, sure, you may have to quick trigger and rally to the ball to attack Justin Fields. You may give up a couple plays downfield, but at this moment, in my opinion, Nick, the scary part is that so Tim Jenkins recently came out and he talked about Fields' footwork, which I thought was a really, really interesting conversation. Did you hear about this?
Yeah, I liked him. We follow each other. He's a
Perfect.
really good dude.
He rules. He talked about how he thinks that switching Fields' footwork to put his right now Fields has his right foot back in the gun. That he thinks that if you put his left foot back in the gun, it's going to change Fields' timing and get him a little bit more in sync with what's going on. And while that's a great idea in theory, Nick, I don't think Fields has time for things to get worse before they get better. I'm not even playing. Like to me, this is more a conversation about self-preservation from the coaching perspective. Like Luke Getsy is trying to prove that this isn't his fault already. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know about you. I thought that the call script in the third and fourth quarter got darn near pathetic. Like,
Oh,
calling
yeah.
3 screens in a row was pathetic, in my opinion. And I'm not one to normally do that, but it
Mhm.
was really, really awful. And
Mhm.
so I sit here looking at this Bears offense, Chiefs defense matchup. And obviously, Justin Fields has a lot to prove. And who knows? His rushing ability might just crack the game open. Very, very possible. But it doesn't help anything that aside from one player who we've now gone 50 minutes and we haven't brought him up, I don't know if the Bears have enough matchup advantages to force Spag's hand. The only way they're going to do it is if Justin Fields rushing tears this thing open and they get DJ Moore going. What did you think about everything going on with DJ Moore? How do you think the Bears go ahead and maximize him going forward?
Well, it's nice that DJ Moore finally had a 100-yard game. And the other thing too that
Didn't it look
to
so easy?
recognize, and we talked about is Darnell Mooney, knee bruise. He was limited today, so hopefully that's good news. He'll be back. But I mean, one of the things that I think when that happens, right? When you don't have the advantages, you have to shorten the game and you need to make things simple. And to me, there's one thing that we could do instead of making this the shotgun drop back, stay in the pocket type offense. What if Justin Fields, I don't know, went under center and we started running the ball and we started running, he could just boot and roll out from there. And because when he is under center, I think he's almost more comfortable. It's things that he's done before. His footwork isn't as inconsistent where quick little steps or really slow elongated steps and the snap isn't going to be all over the place. You have two good backs. We run the ball well. You have a quarterback who can be a threat even from under center with running and booting. What about that?
Nick, did I just hear you call for the 2022 mid-year offense?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
no, we're not passing anymore. We're running it 63% of the time, baby.
I love our backs. I just love our backs.
I don't think you're wrong. I'm just bummed that that's where we've come to. Does that make sense? Like,
But he still can pass out of that.
well, you can, right? But it's, I don't know. This is where things get so complicated, right? Because I would look at that and I would say, yeah, but that's like assisted passing. Like you can get a lot of the cues. It's like booting, right? There are a lot of people that see boots and they're like, well, boots rule. And I'm like, boots rule, except you don't attack the middle of the field. The Bears offense right now is not attacking that area between 5 yards and 25 yards in the middle of the field. And when you look at Fields' passing charts, it's just a massive hole, man. And like
Mhm.
the
It is.
problem is when people say you have to win from the pocket, it's really them not saying you can't attack the middle of the field from anywhere else. Like, unless you're Josh Allen and you're willing to throw across your body rolling right, which he's done a couple times now, you're going to throw a bunch of picks doing
Yep.
that. Like,
Which is what Fields does over the middle right now. He throws
he
a lot of
does.
interceptions between the hashes.
And so I understand because I don't disagree with you, Nick, that at this moment, if we can't do it, we got to change. But also, I would love to see my year 3 quarterback able to attack over the middle of the field. I don't want to call it. Okay, let me ask you this. How many quarterbacks, what do you think the standard is to consider yourself a successful quarterback that cannot attack the middle of the field?
Mm, well, that's I guess what I'm getting at is
Right.
because there's one thing, and again, I believe we talked about this on one of our first podcasts, but Ben Solak on the Ringer, they have this show, and they talked about play action and how much play action can mask bad to mediocre quarterback play. They talked about it with Ryan Tannehill, did this in Tennessee,
Jordan Love
Baker
does it all the
Mayfield
time.
did this in Cleveland, etc. But play action only works really well when you're under center. Jared Goff is the
Right.
perfect example of this. When he's under center and he can hide his body with the ball, then the linebackers have to come up. So that's my idea with this is that you can do some of this play action, even drop straight back and still attack because the linebackers have to respect it instead of this, which baffles me, by the way. I know you saw this, Robert. 3rd and 13. They still have to a play fake to the running back, and
So
then he gets into
stupid.
his drop. Like, what are we doing?
We're calling PA shot in Madden, right? Forgetting that there's no purpose for that. And speaking
Stupid.
of, another thing that drives me crazy. So I clearly hadn't done enough study on specifics. Sometimes you don't learn something, Nick, until you go take the time to learn it. And I'd never watched QB's feet as many times as I had until
Yeah.
last Saturday. And I did not realize how uncommon shotgun 7-step drops are, which is awfully weird because that's 35% of the Bears offense. And
Yes.
every other team is calling 2 of those plays per game, maybe, and they usually don't work. And then you hear guys like Tim Jenkins talk, and they say that a shotgun 5-step is a standard 7-step. And you realize, oh my word, our entire offense is 7 and 9-step drops. This is like if, I don't want to go there, but this is like if you asked a Twitter fan, hey, what would you do for Justin Fields? Well, I just throw a bunch of deep passes. And what do you do for deep passes? Well, I just drop back really far. Like, I don't want to give too much credit where credit isn't needed, but you go back and you watch some of the better games from 2021, and Fields is only dropping 3 steps, 5 steps from the gun explicitly, and everything else is under center. And I'm not the worst part, Nick, is that I don't know how much of this you could change overnight. Like,
Right.
if Luke Getsy thinks this is working, like if Luke Getsy believes in the offense, he could easily be spending those Tuesday meetings, bringing in Matt Eberflus, circling an open DJ Moore, and saying, "My court, I can't work with this.
Yeah.
He's just got to hit this." But there's so many things that I look at within this offense. Like, you watch what Miami's doing right now. Tua takes 3-step drops nearly all the time. It is just often it's a 1-step. It's like a
Yep.
one big gather step as
I
he
believe
pulls the
he's
ball
gotten hit.
back.
I believe he's only gotten hit once all season so far, and he doesn't have his left tackle either.
And like, I get that that's Tua. So let's talk about somebody else. Like, let's talk about Lamar Jackson, whose footwork is pristine in the pocket. And he's only taking three, maybe
Yep.
occasional 5-step drops. Josh Allen, when he's in a 5-step gun drop, the ball comes out at that 5th step because there's just not that much time for it to be anything else. Do you feel like the routes are well synced to the drops?
No, so okay, now you're gonna get into my quarterbacking background. So feet, in my opinion, are everything with a quarterback. Your feet, they determine your balance, they determine your accuracy. I mean, if you overstride, you understride, all the stuff goes together. But there's a few purposes with your drop. One, get away from the defense as quick as possible so you don't get a sack, blitz, immediate pressure, whatever. The other one is, and this is goes back to me studying with, about Bill Walsh and Joe Montana, et cetera. When you hit that back step, that's when you're supposed to be looking at your first read, and then you would throw there. And then if not, then you would hitch or you would shift, depends on if you can step up in the pocket to your second read. Like everything goes together just like a perfect puzzle. But right now, it's a chaotic puzzle, which I don't know. We might have pieces of puzzle here, some Legos here, some Lincoln Logs here. Like none of it goes together. And I'm not sure that Fields knows, okay, this drop goes with this or this goes with that. And so he's taken this really short, elongated thing. And then when he's at the top of his drop, which I saw last week, the number one read isn't even out of his break yet.
These
So
seven
it
step
doesn't,
drops take so long to break. I don't know
yeah.
what offensive coordinator thinks that you're going to get nearly any of these routes to resolve on time because they take forever, Nick. And like these are the kinds of routes that you should be looking at, either alerting off of at the start of like before the play has ever
Yep.
happened, or you should be getting to them third so that it's implied that you hit a 5, maybe one of these weird 7-step drops, and then on your second hitch you get to that next read. It is wild watching other quarterbacks and seeing how explicit their hitches are, where Derek Carr goes hit like feet out to read 1, feet slightly more in to read 2, feet all the way to the right to to read 3, and then he
Yep.
just flicks the ball to the check down because you don't really need your feet to do that. You're
Mhm.
exactly right that footwork is everything. And I actually don't know. Like, yes, I'm going to point the finger at Getsy and be like, what on earth are we doing here? But I don't know. Is it a
There's,
Fields problem? Is it a Getsy
there's
problem?
Yeah. There's one other theory that I have, and I found this before with athletic quarterbacks. I found this when I studied RG3 back in the day with Washington. A few other quarterbacks I've got it kind of coming out. When you're athletic, it's almost like and I don't know if this is why they're slowing him down. You can get to your drop too quickly, quicker than the average quarterback, and it doesn't time things up perfectly. So then they want him to go slower because you can also, oh, I'm going to avoid the rush. I'm going to quickly move here and I'm going to go too far. Like you have too much athleticism within the pocket. Like you want to talk about great footwork. It doesn't take athleticism. Tom Brady and Peyton Manning had great footwork,
Great
a
footwork.
good base. Drew Brees, great bases. And they're probably some of the least athletic quarterbacks we have seen. And I don't know if that's part of it as well, but it's not synced. And honestly, it throws Fields off almost like when you have Mahomes and Allen and Russell Wilson when they're just like freelancing. That's almost what it feels like on every play. It's like, okay, now you just have to freelance it. And he's not good enough yet at that point just to be like, I don't care what the drop is. I'll be ready to throw then because, like, for example, here, there was the one play when I believe it was Tyler Scott was coming in on a dig and he was
Oh,
the
that
third
broke my
route in the
heart. He got
progression.
so open.
And so Fields looks left, and let's say Scott was the third read. He looked left, not there. Center was Trent Taylor. Trent Taylor was, I mean, he could have maybe layered it, but I'm going to say not really there. And then he felt a little pressure. So then he moves to the right. And when he does, he finally looks at Scott. And when he looks and he's open, he can't throw because his feet aren't set. That's what we're talking about. The feet have to be set in order to throw the football. And then actually he comes back, I think, to commit and throws a completion, which doesn't make a lot of sense why he came back there. Anyways,
It
your
worked.
feet have to be linked up, and they're not right now.
And they're not. And the offense doesn't even ask him to be sometimes. Because seriously, there are some of these offensive concepts where it's like they expect the ball to get thrown at the 3-second mark. Uncommon. Like it's
Yeah.
weird seeing all these long resolution routes, but maybe they feel like Fields can't do anything else. I don't know, right?
Mhm.
Like this is where I remember with Mitch and Nagy, it was the chicken or the egg. Is it that Mitch can't do it? Is it that Nagy is a bum? And
Yeah. Yep.
we don't know, and we
Mhm.
won't know. right?
Is it Jocko, his quarterback coach? I
Does he
is it the
suck?
receiver coach not telling them where to be in the I mean, we don't know, but right now it's not working, so something has to massively shift.
And I wish I knew the Kansas City corners better. I wish I had a better scouting report on this Kansas City defense. I didn't get a ton of time to watch them. But if there is one thing that's going well for the Bears right now and future, DJ Moore looks unbelievable, I
Yes.
think. Like, he's not. mm, let me say this the way that I really want to. I don't think DJ Moore is winning routes at the rate that some other wide receiver ones are. Not because he sucks. He's open an awful lot. But what's really working is that on, I'd say, more routes than most, Nick, he's, oh my word, open, right? Like, when DJ Moore is open, you're talking neon signs pointing in his direction. Like,
Yeah.
everything's there. And then
Mhm.
he's breaking the first tackle like it's written in the code, like
Yep.
it's in the script for him
E
to, like,
even a
just
hitch
generate
when the
yeah.
corner's right there,
It
somehow
just
he
doesn't
broke it.
matter. It just doesn't matter. Like,
Yep,
you're looking at one of the most obvious cases of just feed this guy the ball. Like,
yep.
let him go get 220 yards passing for you, and then you could just get 80 to everybody else, and you're on your way to 300. Like,
Mhm.
DJ Moore looks every bit the part of a wide receiver one. And the only thing I'm worried about, and again, if I sound worried, it's because the offense is worrying. Can I be so honest about
Well, you
that?
don't know what's gonna happen with it every other play. It's like it honestly, it just feels like and again, there's a lot of stuff that Fields needs to work on, but everybody, it's like 10 guys will do their job right, and then it's a false start. So, like, for example, what this drove me nuts, Robert. Roshan Johnson has the long run. Awesome. Here we go. We're in Tampa territory. It's gonna click now. And then Braxton Jones false start, 1st and 15. And then we have the bootleg. Fields rolls out, throws a dime to Cole Kmet on the sideline, catches it, feet down, doesn't tuck the ball away and gets it knocked away. It's like we just can't. Everyone does something wrong on every play.
And weirdly enough, you mentioned something, but let's go back to it. Uh, do you realize how well the Bears running backs ran the ball on Sunday?
Oh well. No,
Like,
what's the efficiency? I didn't see that.
the specifically, I'm looking at, we're talking just basic yards per carry. Khalil Herbert had 7 carries for 35 yards, 5 yards per carry. We liked that. Roshan Johnson, who obviously cracked a long one, had 4 carries for 32 yards. So not nearly as efficient. Yes, it's 8 yards per carry, but like,
Yeah.
you're looking at 29 yards and 3 1-yarders in one fashion or another. But the read option with the handoff to the running back was winning. Like, we were getting 5 and 7 yards. There was a time last year we would have ridden that all the way down, down the deck field. Like, the worst part is this brings back bad memories from 2019 where it's as if Getsy decided, sweet, we got these receivers, we got a better offensive line, we're going to win through the air now. And the quarterback isn't winning through the air for a bazillion reasons that we've gone through. And something's got to change
Yep.
because if we're going to run a super rushing offense, you better do it soon. And it sucks that we lost our second best run blocker because Darnell Wright has actually been really, really strong on his
Yep.
side.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
like, it's too bad that we lost Braxton Jones, potentially on the eve of running the ball a billion times. But
Mhm.
eventually, anything you got to say about the offense? Because eventually we got to talk about the defense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The only last thing I want to say is the one thing besides being under center, if we are in the gun, the one thing that I would love to see, let's start running quarterback power. Let's start running what Jalen Hurts runs. Cool. You're going to empty it out. We're going to pull a blocker. We're going to trap. We're going to get downhill, and because we have to figure it out if we can do this. And honestly, that's going to be super efficient offense. So let's
Mm.
do it.
Nick, no, you're football wise, you're right.
Mhm.
Football wise, you're right.
Yep.
People get hurt doing this. Like,
Jalen Hurts is okay.
Jalen Hurts is a tank. And that's not to say Fields isn't. It's like, we're looking, you see guys like Anthony Richardson, he's out. Like, Cam Newton struggled with enough injuries. Justin Fields has left the game, I think now, like 7 different times for injuries. Like, it's not that I disagree with you. Jalen Hurts definitely does, but like, I am always one who wants to be careful when it comes to the quarterback run stuff. But I don't know. You can call me a coward and I will live with it because to me, Nick, I see it as the moment we lean too hard into the quarterback run stuff, we are sacrificing potential growth for something that's going to work now but it might not work in 3 years. But right now, 3 years from now doesn't matter. Like, I don't
Well,
even think we're
that's it.
guaranteed week 10. So to your point, it's about time to start.
That's
And
why. Yep.
the only issue that I have, let's use an example, Nick. So Justin Fields, let's say third drive, sprains his shoulder. Or maybe not even sprains, but like something feels wrong, right? And out of nowhere, Patrick Mahomes makes a patented Patrick Mahomes mistake. They do happen. And he throws an interception. Sudden change. Fields is still getting his shoulder looked at in the blue tent. Tyson Bagent goes out there. Nightmare, in my opinion. Because like once Genie's out of the bottle, it's gonna be hard to put him back in. Not because I sit here.
The Bailey Zappi stuff. Is that where you're at?
Yes, we saw Mac Jones get benched. We saw
Who
Mac
cares?
Jones get benched in a real
cares?
game in week 7.
We want success. Does it matter how it happens?
Doesn't it a little? Isn't this season
No,
about
no,
Justin Fields?
because here's the deal. Fields has to do it this year. Or he's gone. We agree. We
Right.
haven't done it through 2 weeks. And what defenses are doing, they're not allowing him to boot or to roll out, and they're waiting for him on zone read.
Basically just fencing him into the pocket.
So he can't run.
Right.
So this is how you're going to run. If you're going to wait out there, cool. We'll go empty, or we'll let the back, and that then you have a numbers advantage. And he still can run 5 yards and get down, 8 yards and get down.
It's a good offensive plan. Like if we were coaching a game, you and me, and our families were on the line for some horrible anime reason, right?
Oh, wow.
Like
Where are we going with this one, Ralph?
I'm more saying like the stakes are high to the point where we have one game and we have to win it. That's a great game plan right now. It really is. It's probably the game plan that I imagine the Bears are going to roll out right now because you got to treat this game like a must win.
Wait. Are you saying that because Getsy listens to us? Remember we talked about what, in the last podcast?
Unfortunately, I'm saying it because good offensive coordinators tend to be predictable. Is that bad? Like, I mean, generally, two guys on the internet can anticipate what offensive coordinators that aren't super innovative are probably going to do.
Spagnuolo, don't listen to us, okay? How about that?
Don't listen. But at the same time, Nick, like, I'm just going to go back to it. Calling a play action bootleg on the first play of a second half where you didn't call much play action was something that anybody would have done. And in that moment, Green Bay had him.
And what I would love is that, like Green Bay does this super well. If you're going to go play action, do play action on stretches and then have him drop straight back. That way you're not going to get the edge.
Right.
Ear holing you, and then it gives you time. Like it all goes together like an offense should.
Nothing goes together in this offense, but we have talked enough about them. We've got we're on a surprising. You and I are trying, I know, to keep this a little more pinched in. We set a deadline at an hour and a half. We maybe we don't have to talk about. No. There's something I got to mention about this defense because there's a narrative out there that Matt Eberflus's defense can't work without a better defensive line, and to some degree, that's definitely true. But I will tell you what: for all the talk about Jalen Carter, the Bears have an elite defensive lineman on their defensive line right now. Yes. I don't know what Andrew Billings did in this offseason. Like, the best shape of his life stuff, for once, they meant it. They were trying to tell us something. Because Andrew Billings is, if memory serves, I'm going entirely off the top of my head, he is second in total PFF grade on pass rushes. He is fifth in total pressures. He is fifth in their pressures per snap metric. He's fifth in pass rush win rate. I'm starting to feel bad about some of those specific, but they're all top 10. He's fifth in pass rush win rate at 25%. And coincidentally, Nick, the down he doesn't tend to play is third down. And which down are we poor in?
Yep. I mean, and you're right. So he's second, and this is among interior D linemen. He's second in PFF pass rushing grade. He's the 9th overall best interior D lineman. And our defense, and again, like you think of like, we got to get one of these guys. Javon Hargrave, pretty good guy last year. Got a lot of money, went to the 49ers. He's 12th. Jonathan Allen, we hear all about him. He's 13th. Deron Payne, we're going to get him. He's 14th. We have a guy better than that, and our defense is still bad.
And to me, the maddening part about this is that, so I've seen a lot of people talk a lot about Tyreek Stevenson, and I don't know how you feel about rookies in the NFL, but when you send Tyreek Stevenson one-on-one, multiple scenarios, in blitz scenarios where he's sitting as a bird on a fence, like right in front of the sticks, not anticipating anybody to go over his shoulder because he doesn't think the quarterback's going to have time to get there, like the Hall of Famer is going to beat your rookie. Like Mike Evans is a horrible matchup. Great learning matchup, but I'm not surprised Tampa leaned on it. I'm disappointed that the Bears kind of gave it away like they did. And another thing I wanted to ask you about from a coaching perspective, I only just over the offseason learned the term blitzing from depth. Do you feel like Matt Eberflus is prioritizing his disguises a bit too much? Because the blitzes that we've seen in many of these cases for Baker Mayfield with proper anticipation, he was able to get a throw off without even taking a quarterback hit because the free runner that the blitz created literally did not have the foot speed to get home, which is why you normally see so many blitzers just stack up on the line and basically make it obvious. Do you think there's any truth to that idea that this like Eberflus super disguise heavy, let's blitz from 7 yards, 8 yards, 10 yards off in some cases is intrinsically problematic?
I like blitzing from depth. I like disguising
That's why I
because
asked.
to me it's the um if you can see it coming, then you know you can throw hot. When you don't see it coming, that's when you get turnovers. Like the quarterback gets completely laid out. They don't see the guy coming at all, or they don't see the rotation because they went play fake. Remember, we talked about this with Jared Goff.
Right.
Jared Goff, when he turned his back in with the Rams, and then he comes back and it's a completely different picture. That's when you're going to start getting turnovers or hesitations and sacks. So I like the disguising a bunch. It might be we just don't have the personnel yet, or we haven't been used to it enough yet. I mean, Flus has only done it himself for 1 week.
And it did look completely different. It just didn't get results that were any different. And
Right.
in fact, some of these cover two calls, I think, get as obvious as they get. Maybe I'm just complaining. That's very possible. But it feels like on third and long, 3rd and 8 plus, they are calling cover two. And I would love to see us not at some point. Maybe we'd stop giving up these massive gashes down the sidelines, right, Nick?
Cover
But
4. I wanted cover 4. Come on.
it doesn't help anything that Eddie Jackson and Jaquan Brisker missed major chunks of that last game. And
Mhm.
the same thing we talked about early in the season, safety depth reared itself as quite an issue in that one. Because,
Yep.
I mean, he's a 7th round pick. I'm always going to be relatively kind to players that I don't think were drafted to play heavy roles, but I don't really want Elijah Hicks as a long-term backup safety if I got to choose.
No, no. And honestly, as a coach, I would do exactly what Tampa did. Okay, who's the worst guy in the secondary? Oh, we're gonna pick on Stevenson. Oh, you're gonna sub out Jalen Johnson. I'm gonna go pick on Terrell Smith for a snap. Oh, Eddie Jackson's hurt. Okay, Elijah Hicks. Oh, they're both out. Now I'm gonna pick on the they just picked on the weakest link all the time. And it's a good
That's
idea.
what they should have done.
And here's the problem though. They got a ton of yards on Chicago. But just like in week 1, when Green Bay took their shots for big plays, they hit. And Tampa took their shots for big plays and they hit as well, although some offensive pass interference helps. But either way, the at some point we have to stop teams from hitting their big plays and make them make all these small plays down the field, and then you're going to force some turnovers. Then you're going to get some stops, and that didn't happen in the first half and drive, but it started happening in the second half. So that might give us a little hope.
Well, it's so funny you say that because I can't help but feel like the Bears can't do anything on 3rd down that's actually flummoxing an opposing offense. I've seen them throw up to 6-man blitzes, like a 6-man total pressure, and they're not getting home. At least they're not getting home fast enough.
Mhm.
Blitz getting home is so funny to me. I feel like, Nick, because on a normal passing play, you could sit back there for up to 4 seconds. On a blitz passing play, if you hold for 2.5, ball should come out and
Yep.
somebody's probably going to be open. Like
Yep.
the timers speed up. And
Mhm.
it's just wild because Billings in particular, like this sounds hyperbolic, doesn't it? Don't we sound like two people that got really, really excited about this one guy that got
Oh
listed as
my
6
gosh.
pressures,
He's so
like in one
good.
game? He's dominating. Like he's throwing guys around. And
And I didn't expect this because he's a run stuffer. I
yes,
did not. This pass rush thing. I mean, he must have went to what the pass rushing schools that they have and just learn some new things because he's a different guy.
Home Dog went out there and wished upon a star, and his wish got granted because some of these paw, like he's moving around like a dancing bear at the snap, gets his hands underneath. In particular, it helped that it looked like he was overpowering the center at will. So we'll see how he's able to hold up against. It's Creed Humphrey, right, for Kansas City,
Yeah.
their
Yep.
center. We'll
He's good.
see how Billings holds up against that.
Joe Tooney's good too, guard.
Wouldn't surprise me if Billings doesn't play as well as he has, but that's not a dunk on Billings in particular. It's more
No.
pointing out that there are a lot of centers in the league that aren't super great, and so
Well,
you get a nose tackle that can whoop, and you're gonna look like Dexter Lawrence in a hurry.
the other thing with that though is actually both of those guys haven't played up to the potential that they've been at recently, like the past few years. They've had a rough start to the season as well. So I mean, again, like I said, Kansas City's not playing great. So there's a
Right.
few of these guys that, I mean, again, we talk about Chicago, like we could talk about the defense, who actually maybe I'll just lead into that. I've been very disappointed with our linebackers. I think Tremaine Edmonds had a better game, but TJ Edwards, man, like I was more excited about you than Tremaine Edmonds.
What are you
And
looking for that you're not seeing?
I think he's a little lost. I feel like this system, and again, maybe that's because he played middle last year and now he's a weak side linebacker, but he seems a little lost to me in terms of communication, where he needs to be. And I think he's a step slow then.
So I can't tell if I'm nitpicking. You tell me if I'm nitpicking, but I feel like I can see little teaching issues throughout the defense. Like this can be as simple as like you're talking about the fact that TJ Edwards does look a little lost. And you'd swear that half the time Tremaine Edmonds plays the play the way that he like the Bears are doing it, and half the time he plays it the way Buffalo would have done it. And sometimes I like the Buffalo way more. But to your point, it's not consistent enough.
Yeah.
And then you look at some of these, this is so specific, but I sent this over to a DB coach friend of mine and he got back to me and confirmed what I was worried about. There are two plays in particular where the Bears called cover two against 3-by-1 sets. And when the offense ran a go route down the sidelines, the corners would let them release to the outside. Like you saw Tyreek Stevenson and Terrell Smith on different occasions put their hands on the guy, but like, yes, you're going to consider that a reroute, but like you got to get that guy into the sidelines. Like you can't just let him walk around you. And if it's one guy, we can blame it on one guy. But I'd swear to you, man, it's like it's everybody. And at what point do we then start calling into questions? Okay, so we're seeing a lack of detail on the offense. If we see a lack of detail on the defense, because I would argue the defense is being carried more by individual talent when things go well. Do you feel the same? Like
Oh yeah.
that's Jalen Johnson being a stud. That's Eddie Jackson hasn't really had to get his man more than a couple times, but Jaquan Brisker has impressed me. I think Tremaine, when he's good, looks like one of the Bears' best players, in
Yep.
my opinion. He
Yep.
is so big. He is so athletic. I will give him the longest leash on earth because he's playing with a generally poor defensive line. And
Mhm.
God, if I was a coach, I would just love to talk like to work with a guy like him because he can do things for your coverage of
He's an
like
alien.
units that nobody else can.
Yep.
And Billings has been the biggest surprise because again, for all the people talking about Jalen Carter, the Bears have a defensive lineman right now. I'm not even being hyperbolic, Nick. He is statistically rivaling Dexter Lawrence. And
Yep.
they signed him for a 1-year deal. Like
Yep.
he does this for 6 more weeks. You got to start talking extension because you got to get this guy under contract before he basically rakes you over the coals.
Mhm.
Because anyways, all this to say that the foundational ideas behind the defense are really bothering me. Why do we see a 3-by-1 set? What have you seen your entire life? When you've got a cover 2 call on and you like the offense comes out in a 3-by-1 set, what happens?
Well, if I'm the outside corner, that you're rerouting and pushing him inside and funneling him to your safety, and you're hoping that your Sam is probably doing the same to number 3, and you're pushing again, like what happened to DJ Moore and Cole Kmet and DJ Moore and Chase Claypool. You want to put the receivers close to each other
Yes.
to shorten the passing windows to make it easier to cover all 3.
And that's if you play cover 2. Most defenses that I've talked to check out of it. Like,
Yeah.
as soon as you see a 3-by-1 set, you're like, we got to get out of cover 2. We don't have enough guys over here to
Well,
to
well,
make sure
if
that we've spaced
well, if
this.
most of the time, if we stayed in that, then your safety on that side would be over number 2.
Right.
Then he would have the half, and then your other safety would be almost middle of the field, and he would play, poach, so he would have number 3
Right. And
if they
I'm
go
cool with
vertical.
that. But we aren't doing that.
Right.
Instead, we're getting
Well,
Elijah
well,
Yeah.
what happened on that screen? 3rd down, they had 4 guys over there, we had 2. That's pee-wee basic, what are we doing?
That's what I'm saying, man. Like, Alan, the former defensive coordinator, I don't know. How am I supposed to talk about this? Like, the Green Bay game looked so passive and messy and like everything else that we've seen. And Matt Eberflus brought a bunch of fun disguises. Like, for sure, the Matt Eberflus defense looked like it had a greater purpose. But then on 3rd downs, we would just revert to being one of the most boring defenses on the face of the earth. We'd ask Dominique Robinson and Rasheem Green and DeMarcus Walker to go be our dogs. And bad news. Bad news. This just in. Breaking news. They're not our dudes.
Don't you know me and Rasheem Green. I mean, I think I looked this up. I can do this while we're chatting, but I think Dom Rob is the only defensive guy that's in the top. Man, you can keep going. I'm gonna get this though. I think Dom Rob is the only top D end we have in the top 50 among the entire NFL.
I think he plays the least too. Like,
Right.
Yannick is playing a lot, and Justin Jones is not doing anything on nearly any down. And I mean,
Terrible.
that's fine. We didn't ask this defense to be amazing. To be honest, that's part of why I'm looking at these coaching things and I'm saying they got to get fixed, man. Because I tell the way I'm approaching this season right now. Hey, who knows? Maybe they beat the Chiefs. And if not the Chiefs, they'll have a huge test against a Broncos team that if the game goes well for the Bears, it will be a shootout. Because this defense, like the Broncos offense, as I understand it, is low key clicking. It's low key, like they obviously haven't won, but it could very well be 2-0-3 teams. And the Broncos defense is kind of struggling right now, at least as I understand it.
Besides Patrick Surtain, who is amazing.
Well,
So, but
bad
so I
news.
found,
Because DJ Moore
Yeah.
really beat Patrick Surtain a couple
Yeah, I
times
know.
last time they played. But go
So
back.
so here's your stat for you. Okay, so out of the overall grade, and again, this is PFF, everybody, for defensive ends, Dominic Robinson is 56th. Chicago doesn't have another guy in the top 100. That's how bad defensive end has been so far. But let me give some optimism, Robert, because I'm generally an optimistic person for the defense in general. Okay.
Mhm.
So we have rookie corner. We have, again, a new nickel who, by the way, update here, Josh Blackwell, limited practice today with that hamstring. So that gives you a little hope. He
That would
could
be
play.
great if Strowman wasn't one of the best defensive players on the
I
field.
know.
Like,
I know.
that's one of those where I'm
Hold
not
on,
even
hold
trying
on.
to stump for Strowman. Oh, yeah, what?
Hold on. Come on. So
Sorry.
So I know I see we get all hyped about this. So Stevenson's rookie, right? You got 2 new linebackers in the middle. Again, we have a new nickel, whoever it is, not Kyler Gordon. Brand new defensive line besides Justin Jones, who, by the way, is not good. I didn't think he was good last year. I thought we should have got rid of him and saved that money along with Lucas Patrick. Anyway, maybe the optimistic part of this is they need time to gel together because they're all new pieces. They need a few games, not just training camp and scrimmages. They need a few games to come together, and they'll come together and they will click better because, as we know over history, Flus has had top 20 defenses every year. And now that it's his defense and these pieces, the pieces he handpicked, him and Poles, we need these guys in the middle. We want these guys. And we got a couple rookies at D tackle, as we know too, who they've flashed a little bit. Dexter had a couple of good flashes last game. Maybe it will click. It could click in week 3. It could click in week 10, but I think it will get better once they can communicate and figure out their roles more.
I agree with you. The only trouble that I have is that in the NFL, if you can't pressure the quarterback, he will beat you, especially the modern NFL. Quarterbacking is in a weird place right now, if you feel the way I do about it, where on one hand, we don't have the top level quarterbacks. Like, yes, we have Mahomes, sure, but he's kind of in his own little category.
Yeah.
We don't have that like Brady, Rogers, Breeze, Manning like category that was so thick when we were just a couple years ago, and we said literally all of these guys are first ballot Hall of Famers. I don't have to
Mhm.
ask. Like, they are all going to the Hall of Fame. I have no questions about it. Instead, we've got this very large list of quarterbacks that are competent, right? If you give Jimmy Garoppolo 3.5 seconds in the pocket, he will probably find somebody. If you give Baker Mayfield 3.5 seconds in the pocket,
My
he will
gosh.
probably find somebody. And so I can't help but like this is a big game for me. Within reason. Honestly, if you've already listened to me enough, you know that I'm probably not super duper stoked about this one just because it's a rough matchup. It's the wrong
So
quarterback to give a bunch of time to. You
so let's
calling for a
put a
timeout?
bow on this. Let's put a bow on this whole thing.
Well, let me finish. This
Okay,
this will
go.
be my bow. This will be my bow. As I understand it, the West Coast was invented to beat Tampa 2, wasn't it? Like quick fire spacing, get three guys into one area, spread out the defense,
Mhm.
and quickly bullet the ball into space for an 8-yard chunk. We move on to the next play. I can't remember which got invented when, so you tell me because it wouldn't surprise me if you've studied it more. But I thought this came up to check the defense that we play, right?
Well, West Coast was earlier. I mean, Tampa 2 wasn't until
Gotcha.
about,
Tampa
Monte
2 came
Kiffin,
afterwards.
late '90s,
Then I
yeah,
got it
but
backwards.
but still, I mean, West Coast is timing based and short passing, and basically the short pass is an extension of the run game, and Tampa 2 is just keep everything in front of you. So, honestly, it is somewhat of a bad matchup.
Which we'll see, man. But like that, I don't know. It's so funny because I think everybody's going to be focused on the context of Justin Fields, and I wish the Bears got a better chance to run the ball. I hope they get a chance, but man, if they just, it could be anything. It could be anything, Nick, and it has been
Mhm.
anything. Like it could be Larry Borum comes in and he holds very quickly, and a drive dies, and then the ball gets turned over off a punt to Patrick Mahomes, who scores. And if the Bears fall behind by 2 scores, you're not going to be able to just run the ball into the ground anymore. Like maybe you can, but a lot of teams won't. They'll feel pressure to pass. And that could lead to an expose that I don't think anybody wants to be a part of. And I hope doesn't happen. I'm cheering for Justin Fields. I think there are a lot of things working against him right now, is all I would say. Right. Because to be honest with you, Nick, I think that this would be a phenomenal time for the bye week. It obviously would be unrealistic, but like
Or the mini buy.
or the mini buy. Like
Yep.
if Fields could play a Thursday night game where you get that like shorter scouting report, truly just going out and balling might actually be the preferred
Yes.
plan in the first place. And then you
Yep.
get 10 days to work something else out and fix things. That'd be ideal. But it's not. It's not what's happening. They don't get
Yep.
the mini buy until week 5, right?
Yep.
Is it
Yeah,
is
yeah.
it week 5?
There's one early. Yep.
And so they gotta keep trucking. And with the locker room in the state that it's in, it feels like the Bears are gonna pour their soul into this game. They poured the soul in the last one. They blocked a field goal. You know a team is humming when they block a field goal, for crying out loud, and they couldn't close the game out. And so
Mhm.
I I am upbeat. At the end of the day, this is a season where Nick, I'm about to say the saddest thing I think I've ever said to you.
Oh,
At
man.
the end of the day, this is a season where Darnell Wright gets better, Tyreek Stevenson gets better, like Tyree Carter gets better. We see what Nate Davis is going to be in the future. DJ Moore is proving his worth on every single play. Like there's a lot of reasons, no matter what happens, to continue watching because the development is fun and the future is bright. Literally, no matter what.
Mhm.
But this could be the bloodiest game on the schedule.
Oh, yeah.
if it,
Yeah, well, that and then we have this middle stretch of teams which honestly aren't looking great, like New Orleans and the Chargers. So, like, yeah, this right now is gonna be the toughest game. So, I mean, I'm with you. I mean, we want the Bears to succeed, and there's optimism and there's pessimism and there's I mean, Jawan Taylor got benched last week, the Kansas City's right tackle, and so let's put this out there. They have scored 37 total points in 2 games.
bad.
They have not been who they have, been. I mean, Super Bowl champions. I mean, great players. They haven't clicked yet. This could be the get right game for them, or they could just be looking forward to playing at the Jets the week after because they know it's a really tough defense. What is your prediction? Or do you want me to go first?
If you asked me what my heart wants Justin Fields to score 24 points and the Bears to hold the Chiefs to something below 40. So I will say that the Bears gracefully lose 35-24. But what do I think is going to happen? I think, Nick, and I'm going to say this because I'm wrong a lot. Like, if I say it, it tends to exactly not happen, and I will deal with that. But so I'll hope to reverse curse the Bears because I think something goes wrong early outside of the Bears' control. I'm talking like a garbage snap, right? Or maybe not outside the Bears' control, but outside of Justin Fields' control. A bad snap. Claypool runs the wrong route. A run play sets you up on 2nd and 11, whatever it is, right? And that things start to spiral. Because the Bears' org right now seems like they're in a tailspin. And even worse, Nick, in week 2, I thought the Bears let those early sacks ruin almost a quarter and a half before they were able to pull themselves out of it. And they did that in week 1 too, where after the second half of the third quarter, the game might as well have been over because the offense just fell into a funk. If they fall into a funk, I wouldn't be surprised if KC takes advantage, but maybe the defense surprises me. That would be my hope.
All right, so 35-24 from you.
Mm-hmm.
Again, heart, what I want, my gut. I'm going to go 31-21 Kansas City. I think they do score more points than they have, but I do think Chicago scores a few more points than they have. But my optimism is going to tell me that Justin Fields plays better. I think that the team plays better. And in a way, both teams, it's their get right game. So that's what I hope for. And last week, this is going to shock some people. I've defended Chase Claypool a lot, okay, on Twitter, etc. Chase Claypool was in my starting lineup in a fantasy league. It worked out okay for me. Okay. So
you madman.
I know, right? Or I have Marty McFly's Sports Almanac. I'm not gonna give away all my secrets, okay? But I think that Chicago plays better, and I think it's gonna give them momentum for the next week.
I mean, they'll need it because basically, I would argue, Nick, you tell me, we'll wrap up with this. This is the end of the show. I feel like the Bears are in a position where every single game is a must win until something happens between Tuesday and Friday to change the formula, because this game is a must win. And if they don't win it, the Broncos game is a must win. And if they don't win it, the Washington game is a must win. And that's why you hear the NFL adage, you better get that first win early, because even just one can, if it's the binding agent that sets your team's locker room. Until you get that win, nothing's in place, right?
What Chicago needs is last year, week 1, Fields avoids a sack, rolls left, finds Dante Pettis across the field, big play, touchdown. Justin Fields runs for these crazy long touchdowns. So just like Chicago needs one of those kinds of plays. And everyone's like, oh, okay. Like what we thought was happening isn't happening, and let's go. Because right now we're cautious, we're overthinking. It's again the golf swing analogy. We need to grip it and rip it, and we need to, you hit that one right down the fairway, you get some confidence, like, okay, let's go. I'm gonna have a good round. That's what needs to happen.
That's what's got to happen, and we'll see. But until the game happens, we have been Bear With Us. I'm Robert Schmitz, editor-in-chief of the Bears blog. You can find my work on my YouTube channel, Robert Schmitz, which you're probably watching this on, or you're listening to us on Spotify. And either way, do give us a rating. We want to grow this podcast and make it the best Bears podcast that we can for you. Nick, where can folks find your work, and what do you do on Fridays?
Yeah, so Nick Whalen @Nick Whalen on Twitter, Football Guys. I have my DFS article that comes out on Fridays, as Robert said. But I did make a YouTube video, if you want to catch that, of every single pass play broken down and some run plays of Justin Fields last week. So I know, people have the JT O'Sullivans or the Tim Jenkins, who I greatly respect those guys. They didn't do every play. I did because I'm a madman. So if you want to watch and look analysis of every play, and again, I do have coaching background, Division One college, so this isn't just shooting from my hip. You'll learn something. So that those are my works.
Man, thank you so much for jumping on. As always, you guys have a great rest of your week. Bear down, and thanks so much for bearing with us.